Hi,
Okay.
everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're with Orion Hall, a colleague of ours, headquartered in Los Angeles. Would it be Los Angeles? Who is a great immigration lawyer, known him for many years. And one thing that he's done a lot of is Japanese cases. So I thought he'd be a great person to talk about, Japanese visa issues, civil document issues, and the nuances of dealing with just, Japanese clients and their backgrounds. Orion, thank you for coming on the show.
Hi, John. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, you've all the Japanese cases that I've done were adjustment of status. I never actually have dealt with the embassies over there. But, I'm not even sure where to jump into it. Probably maybe non-immigrant visas or wherever you're comfortable with. Tell us some things that stand out when you're dealing with Japanese clients and Japanese cases.
Sure. So one thing that is very particular to Japan is they have very specific guidelines for how you're supposed to set up your visa application packet. And, I haven't worked with every consulate in the world, but from what I've seen, it's pretty unique to Japan. So the main thing is do not staple or hole punch and ACO bind your packets. Which that's what you do everywhere else, as far as I know. Do not do that in Japan. You will make the foreign officer very unhappy if you do. So what you need to do is no staple, no ACO bind, just use a clip and clip the documents together. I guess the officers want to be able to take off the clip and sort through all the documents very quickly. If you staple it or bind it, yeah, like I said, you're going to run into problems. And one thing to know is the foreign officers, who they're kind of like the gatekeepers there, they really have a lot of power. So if they don't like the way you've set up your packet, they can kick you out. So it's very important to follow their rules.
It's so interesting. Style over substance in many embassy processings is so important. Kind of like when you go to court here, it's a lot of the same. But when you have a high volume office, consulates and embassies like in Japan, you got to do it right, especially with the number of E's, for example, that they do there. And E's, notoriously could be a lot of pages or very complex. You got to make it as clean as possible for them to review. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I do want to talk about the E system because, as you said, they do a high volume and they have a very unique process for that. But one other thing I wanted to point out too is the order of the documents. So this is all on their website. So really, if you're not familiar with non-immigrant visa processing in Japan, I really recommend that you read the State Department's website and follow it carefully. You put the DS confirmation page on top, and you put the appointment confirmation on the bottom facing down with the barcodes facing down. And the reason, I know it seems weird, but the reason they do that is because the applicant goes and hands in the packet and they have a scanner on the table and they want the barcode facing down so they can just scan it. So I know it seems very particular, but that's the way they want it. So you have to play by their rules.
Japan is a culture that's really, you can tell from how successful they did in business and, what we hear as almost a stereotype in the US about how efficient and business-minded they are. It's interesting that the embassy kind of absorbed that kind of mentality of perfection in their operations as well.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of set up like an assembly line. Like you go in, you scan it. They don't want you to mess around with the packet at all. I think they're going for efficiency there. So yeah, that's a really important thing because I don't know about you, I've never seen anything like that in any other consulate.
Each one for ease, especially, they make up their own things, but that in particular I haven't heard of before. But and some of them, it's interesting. Some consulates say whatever you want to do on ease, just send it to us. Some are like 15 pages maximum for a package, like some ridiculous low numbers or file sizes to upload. The lack of consistencies in the ease is just excruciatingly difficult to deal with. You have to like notice every little thing, and some could go wrong so easily. Because you might be working with an embassy for the first time, and even though you did a good packet, like it might get rejected or have problems, and the client then looks bad at you for that. But it's a weird situation. Now, Japan does have the full, when it comes to length of time they give visas, they get the full gamut. There's no cuts in how the length of it. Visa reciprocity with them doesn't have any fees, so that's good. The relationship between Japan and the U.S. is so strong. Since World War II. It's so interesting. Right now we're recording this. It's like the anniversary of dropping the bomb on Nagasaki or Hiroshima, one of them too. were doing this, or it was yesterday or so. For a country to go from, mortal enemies to like being a complete ally. I mean, we control a lot of their economy in their country, but it's amazing how that switch happened. Now, moving off from that, and actually kind of going into World War II kind of stuff, they have an interesting aspect that they have 2 embassies that do immigrant visas. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I double checked this before I got on today. It looks like before, my knowledge before this was Tokyo and Okinawa, also known as Naha. The Tokyo and Naha embassies process immigrant visas. Before this recording, I got on and I checked, and it looks like Okinawa is no longer accepting immigrant visas. But I noticed they recently published an update about COVID saying that they're going to process the backlogged immigrant visa cases. So I think maybe they're trying to shift everything to Tokyo. But, up until recently, I guess, you could designate either Tokyo or Okinawa, Naha, as the immigrant visa location. So it's really important to double check when you file the I-130 or the I-140, which consulates are processing the kind of case that you're doing.
Now, when it comes to Japanese documents, they have their own nuances as well. Do you have any comments or experience with that? Civil documents?
Yes, yeah. The Japanese documents are very interesting. And the good news is there's one document that pretty much covers all family relations. It's called the Family Registry, or Koseki Tohon. And it covers birth, marriage, divorce, death, and adoption. So it's like the Uber document. But it comes with its own quirks too. And you kind of need to understand it. So I don't know. I won't, unless you want me to, I won't get too into the background of the whole household registration system in Japan.
No,
but
if you feel like
sure. I think it's good to understand because it'll help you understand the documents. So basically, when you're born, you go onto your parents' family registration, and each family is registered with a head of household in the location where they live in Japan. And when you become an adult, you go onto your own head of household. When you get married, if you're a woman, you go onto your husband's household document. And as of right now, there's no gay marriage in in Japan. So that's off the table. So the main document, like I said, is the family register, which shows that whole household registry. Mm-hmm. And it should show the birth, divorce, and death, and any children that you have. But and this information is on the State Department website. There are different kinds of family registers. The Koseki Tohon, which is the one we always recommend, is the full form one. There's also the Koseki Shohon, which is the short form. It is acceptable under the reciprocity guidelines, but it doesn't show all the information. So you need to do your due diligence in finding out the client's family history, because they may give you a short form Koseki Shohon and you think, okay, this person's never been married, they have no kids before, but actually that information's not on there because it's a short form one. And the other thing too is the way the system works with, when you get married, you jump onto somebody else's family register. There's another document out there called a Joseki Shohon, which is like the canceled family registry. So you may need to get that if the person has a complicated marital history. So, for most cases, for 95% of cases, you just get the Koseki Tohon and it shows everything and it's great. But if there's a lot of complicated history, you may need to be careful. And also you need to make sure that you fully understand your client's family history. Don't just go off of what's on the document itself.
Interesting. Now, how is it dealing with Japanese clients? From what I understand, a lot of times they prefer to have a Japanese speaker involved. Is that a big nuance, especially when you do with businesses over there?
Yeah, a lot of times they do. So one thing I will say is the embassies or the consulates usually have translation staff. Mm-hmm. So that can be a good thing. So, if they really can't speak English and they really want to have interactions with the attorney in Japanese, then, obviously it's better to have Japanese staff. But but that can be a problem. So for example, if you're doing like a manager case, right, like an L1A or an E manager, and the client's going to come over and manage a bunch of American workers and they don't speak English, you know, that can come up at the interview. The officer can say, well, you don't speak English. How are you going to manage all these people? And I mean, you know, usually the common answer is, oh, I'll have Japanese staff to translate for me, but you need to be prepared for that.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or any other notes about processing in Japan?
Yeah, one thing I will add, so just about the NVC, or I guess we could stick to non-immigrant visas, right? So I guess that's it. I guess I would say on the visa reciprocity, one thing to keep in mind is they do get the full 5 years. So you have to be careful, because a lot of clients come in and they think, oh, I can stay for 5 years. Yeah. But obviously the visa and the I-94 are different. So you need to make sure that your client really understands that. Because if they get an e-visa, they're only admitted for 2 years.
Yeah.
So.
And Japan is also is ESTA capable too. So a lot of Japanese clients do travel in on ESTA. All right. Thank you so much for the information and the tidbits. If someone wanted to contact you, what is the best way they can do that?
So they could contact me by email. I'm happy to talk to anybody. My email address is Orion, ORION, at valvolaw, VALVOLAW.com. Or they can call my firm. I work for Valvo and Associates, and we have Japanese language staff if they want to contact us in Japanese. And the number is 213-689-8886.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. Stay online, but we'll say goodbye to viewers right now. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Yeah.